It was my first day working for this plumbing company. I was called in for my first job to this house out of town. The plumbing company had 5 employees, and the owner would choose who does what job. I don't see it as a coincidence that I was sent to some undesirable job far away in a shitty area for my first job. The call was for a leaky pipe under the sink, which is typically the easiest, most basic job to get a call for, depending on the root cause of it. I pulled up to the house, my first ever call, and it was an absolutely disgusting looking house, completely run down as if no one had lived there for years. I went up to the house and knocked until a middle-aged man opened the door. I didn't like his aura from the start. He had this unflattering, disproportionately wide smile that made his entire face appear off-putting. His voice was also really soft and high-pitched, not the voice I was expecting to come out of his mouth. Or maybe it was, given his unusual appearance. He welcomed me inside of the house. I realized there wasn't a single piece of furniture in the house. "Just moved in?" I asked him. He replied yes and then chuckled. Or maybe I should say he giggled because it was just a weird, high-pitched little laugh. He brought me to the kitchen, and the first thing I did was set my stuff down on the counter, then open the cabinets under the sink. I slid myself under the sink and started to examine the pipe, specifically looking at the P-trap and the lock nuts to make sure they weren't overly tight or loose. I noticed the man was standing directly over me, his legs spread wide so that I was sandwiched between both of his feet. It was extremely uncomfortable. I asked him politely to give me some space, and he backed up a bit, but not enough that would make me feel comfortable. I realized that I didn't see any water leaking at all, so I got out from under the sink and tried running the water, but no water came out of the faucet. I looked at the weird man and asked him why the water wasn't running. He said he must have shut off the main water valve without realizing it. When I say I stood there speechless for a few seconds, I'm not exaggerating. I asked him bluntly, "How do you do something like that by mistake?" He smiled and shrugged his shoulders. I asked him to go turn the water valve back on. He turned and said he'd be right back, and I saw him leave the kitchen, but then I heard footsteps walking upstairs. I'd never in my life heard of a water valve being upstairs in any house. I knew something was off with this guy and the situation. Everything from the condition of this house to his mannerisms. And then I started hearing multiple sets of footsteps from upstairs, coming down the steps quickly. In a split second, I decided I was out of there. I grabbed my stuff and quickly walked out to the front door and to my van. I'm a pretty large and loud dude, so I'm not really intimidated very easily by people in a physical way. But there was something about that situation and that guy that told me that some shit was about to go down. I looked at the house for a second, and then I drove away. I called Dave, my boss, letting him know it was just some kind of prank, because that just sounded better than me saying I was scared of that guy. I did a few minutes worth of investigating and found out that that was just a vacant, abandoned house. I got the number that made the call for the alleged leaky pipe from Dave, and it turned out to be a voice over IP number, not even a real number. I reported this shady encounter with the local police department just so that they would be aware of it and maybe close off that house. I've never had a reason to return to that sketchy part of town again. I only worked for that specific plumbing company for about a year.